Look, I opened this jar of rotten baby food, and well, a butterfly came out.
Whoever's the strongest should be delivering the punchlines, so sometimes I'm the strongest and sometimes I'm not, so it would have to all depend on, can I smoke a cigar?
Absolutely. That's the whole
Yes.
point. So, welcome to the Comedians and Elevators podcast. I've got my guest, Domenick Nati. Domenick, say hi, introduce yourself, and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Domenick Nati. I am from the Domenick Nati Show. I host a celebrity interview show for about 9 years now, going on its 10th season. And I started off my career in media and a celebrity publicist, and worked in some film and television. And then almost 10 years ago, I was offered a show where I would interview celebrities, and I've interviewed now over about almost 400 celebrities. And it's some people like, well, I don't know. Should I do the whole thing, or should
If
I
you
say?
want, if you want, I'm curious how many times have you been interviewed?
Well, yeah. I've been interviewed. I mean, I guess dozens of times, but I try not to take over and say too much because I know you're the host. So, but basically, I'll just leave it at that. Work in media. I worked in film and television, and now mostly do like celebrity interviews on my show.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, you ready to get started?
I am. Yes.
All right. Listen, to my regular listeners, I know you don't like when at the beginning of these conversations I ask you to subscribe. None of us like it. I don't like saying it. I don't like it being in here. But it's frustrating. You know what else is frustrating? It's also frustrating when I look in the back end of the YouTube channel and I see that 56% of you that watch frequently haven't yet subscribed. And I know this because I see it in the comment section. You say things like, I didn't know I didn't subscribe. And that's actually what fuels the show. Basically, it's like you're making a donation to the show. So that's why I ask all the time, because it enables us to build and build and build. And we're going for the long term here. Hit the subscribe button and we'll continue to build this show for you. That's my promise. Thank you to all you guys that do subscribe. It means the world to me. So the whole point of the podcast is to compare and contrast the comic versus the comedian. So I define the comic as any person telling funny jokes versus the comedian who's a funny person telling any jokes. So Domenick, would you agree that you start as a comic and evolve into a comedian?
Um, I guess when I think of comic, um, I guess it's hard to describe that, right? So I guess I guess in my mind, I think it's opposite. If someone addressed said I'm a comic, I would say that they are a professional stand-up that writes bits, and it makes it their full-time passion. We say comedian, I guess that would be. I feel like that's more generic. That could be any form of comedy, but not stand-up. So I don't know. I guess in my definition, I would say it's the opposite,
Okay.
but it's definitely debatable.
It is debatable. That's the whole point of this podcast.
Yeah,
It's very interesting. There's many different ways of looking at it. I'm sure you'd agree. It's two sides of the same coin, though, right?
sure. Yeah,
Now
yeah,
you did say that basically I understand that you by definition you cannot have a stand-up comedian. Is that what you're saying?
yeah. When I hear the word comic, just based on I guess like historically, that to me says if you chose to say I'm a comic instead of I'm a comedian,
Mm-hmm.
I would put you in a category of that you do stand up.
Got it.
If you say I'm a comedian, that could mean that first of all you're being sarcastic. It doesn't mean it's your profession. It just means that you have an interest in the genre of comedy. If you say you're a comic, that makes me feel like you are doing sets as a stand-up. But like I said,
Okay.
that's just perspective. That doesn't. I don't know if that's accurate. I'm just saying that would be my first take.
I mean, I've interviewed now over 100 people, and it's everyone's got a somewhat of a variation on this, and it's very interesting. And I think that's why I started the podcast, is
Yeah.
because everyone has a different opinion of these words that we take for granted, right? So, all right. So you ready for the first question, Dominic?
I am.
All right. So it's about the role of persona in comedy. So how much of the comedian's voice is a character versus the real self?
Um, well, I guess that would be depending on the person, but I would say that a lot of your voice and volume and tone and delivery is crafted. So I would say typically it would be very little, but there are some people who are, Gilbert Godfrey and Bobcat, like that have a voice that seems to be their God-given voice that makes it funny. And then there's people like Sebastian Maniscalco that alters his voice and his delivery in order to increase, intensity and drama. And, so I mean, I would, for most people, I would say that your voice is your persona. And it probably should be because your everyday speaking voice is typically too dull, unless that's part of your bit. Is that you are dry humor. I think the people that do dry humor is probably really them. I don't think that they're eccentric people that are going dry. I think that that's probably just them all day. But if you're expressive and that's part of your delivery, I would say that that's mostly a persona.
So you're saying that dry comedy, you got to have a dry throat?
I'm saying if you choose to do dry comedy or like, dad jokes, stuff like that, I would assume that that might not be much of your persona. That could just literally be a lot more of your. That would be more likely that that's your everyday, um, tone
Okay.
than than people that are just. If you're always over the top, and I'm just again, this all I guess just speak from your own experience. There's things that I try to do in comedy, and when I rant, I try to be over the top because those get the more views. I'm not really that passionate, but I have to be to to sell the bit.
100%. Yeah. For a rant. So does authenticity matter or is illusion part of the magic?
I don't think authenticity matters um, in comedy. No, I mean I don't. You need to find your niche that resonates with people, and it doesn't have to be like honest to yourself because at the end of the day you've chosen to entertain people, so it's a conscious choice and no one's making you do that, and your goal is to entertain as many people as possible and increase your own popularity, so you find your niche that people like the most, and typically you go with that. So I don't really think authenticity in comedy is that important.
Okay. So punching up versus punching down. So where do comics versus comedians stand on this? And let me put it in some historical context. So did a jealous medieval prince
Beady, beady, beady,
become the
beady.
first comedian by killing the court jester?
I don't know why I'm not following what you're like.
Because in theory this may not have actually happened. It's like an alternate history, right? So if you can imagine, if we're going to put ourselves in that place, like what is it in the courts back in medieval times that allowed the jester to do what he did, to make fun of all those people that he did, including the royalty themselves? And at what point does he get killed and why?
I don't think I know the story. Is this like a common story or something that I just don't
It's
know?
not actually, but it has been alluded to in Game of Thrones. No, it's absolutely not a common story.
Oh,
This is like a very conceptual.
well, let's go. Your question was punching up or punching down. Can you
Yes.
rephrase that one? I don't know. Maybe I'm dumb.
Well, basically, I mean, yeah, I know I'm putting it into a pretty complicated scenario. And so punching up, like, if you're going to kill somebody, you know, as a joke, I know it's very, very, very dark, very dry.
Yeah.
Would it be punching up if even if it's murder?
Oh, yeah. I think it's punching up. Yeah, because it's edgy. I mean, I think that it's difficult to create relevant current comedy without offense, you know. So especially in this era, if you're not rubbing people the wrong way, you're I don't see how you're going to make it in 2026. So I think that I guess I would say punching up is the way to go. And the days of punching down or playing it safe, I mean, there's just no way. Not today. Um, not even in the last few decades. So I think that without risk and offense, in whatever way you could fight it, it's becoming increasingly more difficult to find that. I think that it'd be nearly impossible to grow in comedy today.
So would you say comedy needs to come from a place of tragedy?
Yeah, I would say a tragedy and accuracy. Um, so I don't think it has to. No, I guess, but I think that I see it as a coping mechanism. Like I read TikTok, a great place for comedy is not just on the stage anymore. A lot of times it's in the comments section. You
Hmm.
realize how funny people are and how people grieve together in a dark way. And it's I find it fascinating. So you see someone making light of their father dying or and you could tell that they're probably really hurt, but it's a way to use comedy to cope. And then you see in the comments that there's so much similarity, and they're not, people are relating to it. So it's tragedy, but there's a couple ways to deal with it. You could keep talking about how sad you are, or you can make light of it, and then you find out that other people see you making light of it, and it helps them cope as well. Because crying about it, we've already tried that. So you try something new. Um, let's try making a joke out of it, even though you don't really think it's funny. So
So could the comments section with AI agents possibly be the way we train AI to be funny?
it should be. There's one thing AI is not is funny. And then so I mean, it's AI is not edgy. That's not the point of it. But if they're trying to learn, and especially our culture and American culture, that's a big thing is to consider as well. You know, you have to AI only works if you understand the audience. So yeah, it's artificial intelligence, but it can't be when you work in communication in any way. You can't be artificial. Say, oh, well, you're human. This is how you want to communicate. You can give facts. Facts don't change. But if you're telling me how to communicate, in especially in comedy or any genre, it's like, well, how do you know how to communicate with me? I'm American. I'm a male. I'm whatever. I mean, of Italian descent. I'm like, whatever it is, you have to know all those factors in order to amuse. If you're going to try to amuse me, you have to know your audience, and that's the thing that AI needs to learn. And then, do they really? Why would they take those risks of offense? Um, so it's mostly AI just plays it safe.
They've been taught to play it safe. Of course, you have
Yes.
Mecha Hitler that came out on X, but if you let it loose. So speaking of, so cultural translation of comedy. So how do jokes that work in one country bomb in another?
Sure. Well, I mean, that's just if you study comedy and study it internationally, you have to come out of your own culture to get that. And I think that's what America is great because we have representatives in comedy from every nationality and ethnicity, right? So you start to learn, like you look at someone like Gabriel Iglesias. It's like I don't find him that amusing, but I do want to learn why other people do. And you talk about genre comedy, and then there's like I never liked the blue collar comedy tour. It's not funny to me. I'm Italian from New York, right? So it's like but I mean, I don't resonate with it. So
Are you offended by it?
No, not offended, just not amused. You know what I mean? It's like I don't relate to it, and like the jokes seem really obvious, and it's but it's like if you get to know their audience, then you start to understand like dude, that's what they think is funny. So it's hard to find things that everybody finds amusing because if you make it specific to a group, then either you have to be a part of that group or have an understanding of that group to get the punchlines. So I mean, it just makes sure that that group that you're targeting is big enough, to carry your career. So that's why people make so many jokes about the difference between genders and oh, women are like this, and it's simple comedy, but you have to get you have to know your audience, especially internationally, to know what they're going to find amusing. Because a lot of American comedy, I think other cultures they're just not going to get it.
No, 100%. I think, yeah, sticking with genders might be the easiest way to transition globally, right?
Yeah,
We all have
yeah,
genders. Arguably, we can argue about that, but at least we can argue about it.
right.
So, very important question, advertising and self-promotion. So, who advertises themselves more? The comic, the comedian, or the magician? You know that place where you're not conscious and you're not sleeping either? That's your power bill to the electric company. Right here. I want us to be here with free energy, where the Wardenclyffe Tower meets the Eiffel Tower. But that's not where we are. We are here, where you've got the utility and you've got residential solar. Between these two, we know which one saves you money. This is where we can go in the meantime. But this is where I want us to be now, and this can be done now. So let me deputize you to represent DOSE, Department of Solar Efficiency, and let's get on the podcast and get the message out today. See you soon.
Who advertises themselves? You're saying like
Yeah,
advertise
just
themselves?
who do you see advertising themselves more?
I would say probably a magician. Um, I think that a lot of people that go into comedy, they want to make their goal and their strength is to be a writer and then to be a speaker and they want that room and they want that audience to resonate with what they're doing, right? So it's very personal. You say like, well, okay, we want you to do this set. Okay, well, you don't just say, okay, I don't need to know where it is. I don't need to know who it is. I'm there. But that's not how comedy works, right? So it's like, well, where is it? Who are the people? What is the venue? Like, who am I talking to so that I can deliver the appropriate material for that, who's going to be watching me live, right? So magic is not that personal. So I think it's easier for them to promote because it's more generic. It's like, well, I can, these are my tricks and they will impress anybody of any age group, of any, um, any genre, any demographic. They're tricks, but they're not personal and they don't adapt as much to each audience. So it makes it easier for them to self promote. This is my shtick. When you do comedy, your shtick has to change in your delivery and in your material has to change based on your audience. So I think that they promote less and they just promote the city that they're going in, um, because they're going to change it, based on that. So they're not great self promoters typically, um, because it's not really about them becoming famous. It's about them. It's pretty sincere. It's about them genuinely. They want to make people laugh. They want to entertain you. Like magic is more, I want to entertain you, but I also want to like gain exposure for myself. So I would say that magic out of those three.
All right. So, censorship and offense. So, does a comic avoid offense while a comedian courts it to prove a point, like a magician?
I don't think either should avoid offense in any form of entertainment. I think that, I mean, this is me talking or somebody that, I've been very controversial in my career, but I think that when you are, if anybody is in any form of entertainment and they're shying away from offense, um, then, they should probably find a new avenue. So that doesn't have to be you don't have to be offending on purpose. You know what I'm saying? Even if your goal is to, uh, is to not be offensive, I think that if you shy away from it, then you're doing yourself a really big disservice because people aren't interested in that. So I can't remember what your question is, but it doesn't matter what genre. If you're of trying to avoid offense, then in no way should you even make yourself public because
There you go. That's the way to
yeah,
do it. Just you got to censor yourself, is what you're saying.
yeah,
If you're going to censor yourself, just censor yourself. Otherwise, don't. It sounds like an absolute philosophy.
yeah.
All right. Okay. So speaking of, so censorship. Oh, I'm sorry. So censorship and offense. We already discussed it. So who survives better in a cancel culture environment? The comic, the comedian, the magician, or the mudslinger?
um who survives best? um I guess it would be between, it's definitely not the comic or the comedian, because when you say survive, that means you have to outlive, the controversy. uh, Comics and comedians are cancelable. I would say the mudslinger probably survives the best, because it's their expectation, right? So, I mean, if you are a comic or comedian or a magician, and then you step outside of your boundaries and you get canceled and you overstep and you've done something, Michael Richards, you've done something that should not have done. I mean, Michael Richards still can't get any work, because he said the N word, I don't know, 15 years ago, or whatever. It's like, because really, it's like, bro, what are you doing? Like, you're an actor and you're a comic. Like, why are you yelling these words from that stage? And that's it. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, that's been it for him. Now, if he was a known, it's because nobody was like, dude, you're not supposed to be that guy. Like, what are you doing? Like, and then you step outside of that, and you could be done forever. Now, mudslinger, I mean, if that's your thing, and that's what you're known for, then yeah, it's probably the safest place to be, because it's like, well, this guy's just trying to get a rise out of you, and if you have a degree of fame and popularity with that, there's a lot you can do with that, and you can go a long way if you keep changing, just reinventing yourself. But it'd be harder to cancel you if you've already been accepted as a known mudslinger. So I think it's easiest for them.
All right. So, Dominic, are you ready to enter the multiverse?
I think so. I got
Okay. So, board game Zoomcast, play versus performance. So, if comedy were a board game Zoomcast, are you competing as the colorist, adding tone, mood, and shading, or the Foley artist, building punchlines with soundscapes and timing?
hmm. Um, I'd probably like to do color. Yeah. I mean, I would depend on, I guess, my um who I'm playing with. I think as if you're playing a comedy board game with
Well,
other people,
if you choose the colorist, then the other person's going to be the Foley artist.
right? So I mean, it would depend on. I mean, I guess I'd have to know who I'm playing with. So I think, and I've had this kind of come up. I mean, whoever's the strongest should be delivering the punchlines, So sometimes I'm the strongest and sometimes I'm not, So it would have to all depend on who's, the punchline is definitely the strongest of the group. So, and then the color could be easy. So I guess you can't really answer that question until you know who you're playing with.
Fair enough. So does comedy work better when it's painted vividly or when it's orchestrated sonically?
Sonically, I think sonically is. I think if comedy creeps up on you, it's a lot more hilarious. I think the most difficult thing to do is to sit around and say, we're going to watch this guy try to make us laugh. And it's like, oh shit, dude, that's a lot of pressure, you know. And I mean, I just watched a special 2 days ago, and I was like, meh. But when I'm scrolling on my phone through my For You page, and I find something hilarious, I wasn't expecting it, and
Mhm.
it's just, I mean, it just die laughing, because of the element of surprise. But if I turn on, Hulu, and I say, okay, this guy has an hour to make me laugh. And then you sit there and be like, that's not funny. That's not funny, because I came with that expectation. So it's very hard to convert me because that's the difference. But there are people that could do it. And those people are the masters, because I came with this expectation, you know. Now, if I'm scrolling like if you're not funny, it's like, well, you know, I never said I was gonna be, But if you're funny unexpectedly, it's a lot easier.
No, you definitely have a point. You're expected to laugh if you're going to stand-up show, but at the same time, you also hopefully want to laugh too, right? Not everybody does,
Yeah,
but you know,
sure.
and I guess that's the point. It's like you let me
Yeah.
down. You let me down. You didn't surprise me, even though I can't be surprised because I'm watching stand-up
Yeah.
comedy.
And I'm watching you because I'm a fan of your other specials. But then
Oh,
somehow this one, I want to be totally unique and then you sit there and be like, well, this was just like his other ones. Like, well, it's the same guy. I mean, I mean, the demand is difficult to live up to, but that's, it's a difficult profession and genre.
yeah, definitely. If you're a fan and then they let you down, that's
Yeah.
definitely that's a tough one. That's what it sounds like happened, right? So here in the Comedians and Elevators podcast, we have a tradition where the previous guest asks a question for the next guest. And the previous guest was Pat Meyer. And his question for you, Dominic, is name an incident or comedian or a joke that changed your life.
Uh, I would say the first thing that comes to mind is the comeback of Dave Chappelle, right? So I am 47, and I watched his whole career. And then I'm fascinated with celebrities, right? And I remember him disappearing. And um, he said something that I thought was very interesting is that he would make the Chappelle show. And then he realized that people were not laughing with him, they were laughing at him. You know, um, he made these racial bits and he was thinking that everybody was on the same page as him. Like, oh, well, we don't believe this. We're just mocking the people that do. And then he came to understand that what he's doing is feeding racists and giving them an out and giving them a reason to be like, see, that's how they are. That's how those black people are. And then he just disappeared, for years. And I just found it fascinating. It's just like, well, where is he? And then he came back, and you wonder. I can't sit here and say I had all the faith in the world in him because that's not how things work. You take 8 years off and then just get three specials. It's like, bro, I don't care who you are. Like, you might have fallen off, and then he just killed it, and now he's back, just as strong, not stronger. And I just I think that it's just fascinating and it's remarkable, and he's definitely my favorite. But I think that it's very difficult for people to understand the mind of an entertainer. And you said Robin Williams took his own life, and you think everybody's okay, but it's a very dangerous place mentally. Um, where you get in your own head and then you just say, I don't want to do this anymore. And they look like the funnest people in the world, but they could be very troubled emotionally because nobody really understands what they're going through. And they're really a lot of comics are deep thinkers. Comedians are deep thinkers. You don't view them that way, but anybody that delivers information the way that they do, they're not dumb, and they're not simple. They're actually very complex. They just deliver it in ways that make you laugh, but they also need to be checked on, you know. Um, so it's that would be my answer for that. I would say just Dave Chappelle and his comeback and his disappearance, have been inspirational for me.
So should these interventions only be done by other comedians?
Probably, yeah, probably. If they see the signs, because that's the thing. I've worked in fame my whole life, and I've been a publicist. And as a publicist, that's what you do. You're there to manage people's public appearance and manage their exposure and their fame. And that's the funny thing. I have a lot of wealthy friends, and they manage their money well, and they have people that help them. And fame is much more difficult to manage than money. And the problem is with fame is that no one can help you because no one can. I mean, very few people can. There are no
Mhm.
experts to say, "Oh, well, you've become a very successful comic or comedian, and now you're getting a lot of attention, and here's how you manage that." Nobody
Right.
nobody says that to you. You just got to figure it out on your own, and it's really difficult. It's like there's people coming at me all the time, and I don't know how to handle it. And, I was just trying to trying to entertain people, trying to make people laugh. I don't know how to handle all the things that come with it. And you're probably not going to get a lot of help, because no one can tell you how to manage walking down the street anymore. You got to figure that out on your own, and all these people calling you and trying to get your time, and it's um or misunderstanding you, so there's a lot of counseling that needs to come with it, but it's not available, so there's no
Right.
experts. Money's easy. Invest here, and then you watch your money grow. Yeah, I'm a good investor. Like, that's easy. Fame is not.
All right. So, last question, legacy. Who gets remembered? Will the comics Type 5 survive time, or will the comedian's cultural point of view be more timeless?
I think the comedian's cultural point of view could be timeless if they're accurate and if they're ahead of their time.
Right.
George Carlin clips could be played forever.
Yeah.
Richard Pryor's clips could be played forever. Um, Bill Cosby's won't. He didn't say anything. You play it safe, then you die with those people that watched you play it safe. You
Hmm.
say things that are out of pocket, or you say things that are ahead of their time, things that people resonate with that are very tough pills to swallow. Um, those things live on for a long time. There's nothing wrong with being family friendly or what, that stuff gets real corny, and then, I mean, look at comedic movies. People don't really watch comedies from the 80s. It's like it doesn't apply anymore. It's not funny. Your
Right.
parents think, I think they're funny. I thought Tommy Boy was funny. My son doesn't think it's funny. What I mean? It's like or whatever. I mean, whatever. But some of these comedians that said things in the 70s or 80s, that were just really controversial at the time. Um, Richard Pryor and like these people. It's like those clips still circulate because they still apply. So yeah, that would be, I would say, the controversial things that are factual that are being said. Uh, I think that's the legacy.
All right. Well, Domenick, where can everybody find you online?
Sure. Dom Natty Show, DomNattishow. Dom Natty Show on all social media. You go to DominickNatty.com, check out our website, and yeah, I hope to see you soon.
Very cool. Well, Domenick, thank you so much for being my guest. And for everyone, please like and subscribe, and we will see you in the next one.
Sounds good. Have fun.
If you're interested in too much information like in the network state or Mantipus the chicken shit, check out this video. Or is it this one right here? Well, either way. Lizard